Okay, so today we're going to start talking about the 6 basic nutrients that are extremely important for you to know. The first one on this slide talks about water. Water is the most important nutrient for any animal, including you. Why? Because water transports nutrients. It is important for chemical reactions. It's necessary for temperature regulation. It is necessary for the maintenance of your cellular structure. Without water, your cells would collapse. And it is necessary for lubrication, and that is extremely important for animals that eat a lot of dry forage. So that formula on the bottom, the more dry matter, DM, the more dry matter an animal eats, the more water it's going to need. So you think about an animal like a horse that eats a lot of hay. The more hay it gets, the more water it's going to need. You're going to need to know that particular formula for tests and for making rations. So what happens if an animal doesn't get enough water? Dehydration can cause a lot of problems, and they are not limited to those on this list. So it can cause stress on your bladder and kidneys, fecal compaction or colics. We talk a lot about colics in horses. Dry lung tissue can lead to respiratory problems. Production animals that are being used to grow meat or produce eggs or fiber, will not do as well. They won't produce as much. And then, of course, low birth weights and poor conception are going to be an issue as well. Dry lung tissue is a really interesting case. A lot of coughs or wheezes in animals that are kept in barns but not given enough water will oftentimes clear up if you rectify the amount of water that's being provided to those animals. Going to a barn where animals aren't being properly cared for, water's not clean or available, can result in wheezing and coughing. Why do animals often not get enough water? It may be simply enough isn't provided, but also, and something you need to be looking for, unsanitary conditions or a water source that animals are not familiar with, smells different, looks different, unsafe or unusual conditions, such as electrical fences too close to the bucket. An animal gets shocked when it's trying to drink, or unnoticed beehives around water tanks will often keep animals from consuming water. Temperature of the water is huge. At this time, well, not so much this time of year because they're pretty much used to it being cold now, but starting in the fall, as temperatures start to drop, animals will drink less water outdoors as it drops below 40. We think of water heaters in farm situations as being to keep ice off, but they are really meant to keep it at a temperature that animals prefer to drink at. Okay, so that's water. We're going to move on to talking about energy. And what is energy needed for? It's needed for maintenance, and then also work, breeding, lactating, and fattening, which is a term used for animals that are producing meat. It is provided with nutrients, carbohydrates, fats, and protein, those 3. So we've got water, that's one nutrient. The next 3 we're looking at provide energy, and those are carbohydrates, fats, and protein, although protein is the least best source for getting energy. Least best. That's not the greatest combination of words. Carbohydrates and fats are going to be the 2 that we look at with as primary sources of energy, fats being the most efficient, protein being the least efficient. Carbohydrates land in the middle there. And then we'll look at what are non-energy nutrients and what are they used for. They are also needed for growth, reproduction, lactation, providing wool or fiber from hair, health or stress conditions. And the non-energy nutrients are water, which we've already talked about. Though it's important, it provides no energy, and minerals and vitamins. So I want you to think about these 6 nutrients that we've talked about now: carbohydrates, fats, proteins, water, minerals, and vitamins, and consider which sorts of things you yourself would eat if you needed some energy. You wouldn't have a glass of water for energy, nor would you take a mineral or vitamin supplement if you needed energy. You might take those to make sure that you are healthy and digesting your food well and that all your systems are working, but you wouldn't take those to give you energy. You would have something with fats, protein, or carbohydrates. So what we're going to talk about next is carbohydrates. It's the first of our energy nutrients. So what should you know about these? They include starches, sugars, and cellulose. They provide an energy source. And when we talk about an energy source, it is really also the same thing as saying a heat source. They are stored in the body as fat. Most plant feedstuff is high in carbohydrates. So your grains are high in carbohydrates. So that energy and heat source thing is important. If I asked you to give me another function of a nutrient, energy and heat are really almost identical. Those really are almost the same thing. I do want you to know that carbohydrates are typically plant material. And that's really important because when we talk about fats, they can come from different places. So let's talk about fats or lipids. So this is the way we determine where is the best source to get energy. If you look at 1 gram of fat, there's 9 calories in it. So, and that 9 calories means that 1 gram of fat provides 2¼ times more energy than 1 gram of carbohydrates. So you need to consider then which is the most efficient source. So if I want to get energy into an animal, because of that increased amount of energy from fat, fat is going to be your best choice for getting energy into an animal, not carbohydrates in terms of efficiency of getting energy into the animal. It may be that some animals digest some things better, and it may be through carbohydrates an animal is getting sufficient energy, but if you need more, fats are going to be your go-to source. So for that reason, we have seen tremendous focus in recent nutritional studies on using lipids in grain rations for horses in particular. The average fat percentage in an old product, an old diet made for horse, used to be around 3%, and now we're up to as high as 20% in high performance feeds. So again, let's remember what a problem obesity is in small animal and now in horses too. Because it's available doesn't mean it's right for every horse. It does mean that if you have a horse that's what we call a hard keeper, that this time of year is using a lot of energy just to stay warm. Remember, energy is for staying warm, and the most efficient nutrient at providing energy or heat is fats. So in an animal that needs it, that's the place to go, and those products are available now. There are 2 kinds of lipids that we talk about, and you're going to be most familiar with hearing about this in terms of your own diet. We talk about saturated and unsaturated fats. There are 2 unsaturated fats required by the body, and those are linoleic and linolenic. Lipids are also responsible. This is very important because, again, remember, I'll ask you what are the purposes and the functions of these nutrients, and lipids carry fat-soluble vitamins through the body. That includes what we call the ADEK, vitamins A, D, E, K, ADEK. You need to memorize that. Fat-soluble vitamins are vitamins A, D, E, and K, and they are transported through the body with lipids or fats. If you decide you want to get really skinny and you want to remove all the fats from your diet, you are going to have a deficiency of vitamins A, D, E, and K. Same goes for an animal. We need to make sure they have sufficient fat in their diet for those important vitamins. Proteins, again, are not a great source of energy, though they do provide some energy. They are a carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, sulfur, and phosphorus content, and their structure is a basic structure of simple units, and we should all recognize this as amino acids. There are over 1,000 enzymes required for cellular metabolism, and each of those do require proteins as part of their structure. We talked about, or you've read about enzymes being built out of proteins, so that's really important. Proteins also carry nutrients in the bloodstream, and many of them. So they are important, and they have lots of jobs. They build structure. So we don't want to be using protein as a source of energy, particularly in an animal that is trying to build structure. whether it's a growing animal, a reproducing animal, or a production animal, those proteins are used as the basic structural unit of the body. They are also necessary for metabolism, for enzyme, hormones, immune antibodies. So look at number 3 is the source of energy. We want to place that last on our list of expectations for proteins. If you are asking proteins to provide your energy source, you are asking them to do too many things for you. They can't do all of that well. You're not going to have enough protein in your diet to do the things it needs to do and then also provide energy. So what happens if there's insufficient protein? You get reduced growth rates, anorexia, anemia, infertility, low birth weights, and reduced milk production, and many other things like reduced healing, build structure. Remember that proteins build structure. So if you have an animal that has surgery and it needs to build tissue back, heal skin, all of those things require structure, and that comes from proteins. Your 5th nutrient, minerals, serve a variety of really important specific purposes. They are inorganic. You need to know that, as opposed to vitamins, which are organic. They are solid crystalline chemical elements. Total mineral content of plants or animals is referred to as their ash content. Minerals make up 3 to 5%. Remember that. Remember what makes sense. Would it make sense that you're made up more than 50% of minerals? No, you'd look like a stone. So minerals make up 3 to 5% of the animal's dry body weight, depending on the species. And calcium accounts for nearly half of that total body mineral, phosphorus, 1/4, and all of the others remaining 1/4. I'll be giving you some handouts to study a little bit more about minerals and vitamins, but this basic information for now is important. We need to remember that you need a certain amount of minerals, and in terms of all nutrients, more is not always better. Vitamins, same thing. More is not always better. They serve a variety of very important specific purposes. They are organic, and they're used by the body to regulate metabolism. These may be water-based or fat-based. What were the fat-based or fat-transported vitamins? ADEK, A-D-E-K. The rest are transported by water. Another reason you need to have plenty of water. Another reason water is the most important nutrient for your body. It does a lot of work. If we don't have water, we cannot get these nutrients, other nutrients, where they need to be. So again, I'm going to give you some handouts and a worksheet to look at what happens when you don't have enough minerals or vitamins and what happens when you have too much. Balance should be your key word when we talk about minerals and vitamins. Thanks.